Alright, to start off with, this video is not really about the maximum output of the spec itself or the viability of it in Mythic Plus. This is really just designed for either beginners or people who are not sure what to play and want to play something that will not make their brain melt or will not hurt their fingers or will not be something that they spend a lot of time into, and then they realize far into the raid or tier or season that this isn't working out. I'm just not able to output as much as I want to. Right. So starting off with shuffling. Let's just shuffle it. Anyway, it's marksmanship first. I want to put that into B. I want to put that into. I want to put that into B tier. Right. It's it's very good. It's very nice. It's very comfy. It tends to change a lot between seasons or between expansions and stuff like that. So it can really vary in its difficulty, but generally, especially right now, it's quite simple to play, but there's still a lot you can do to min max your damage. However, the difference between, like, say, for example, you know, putting in minimal amount of effort, you can get like saying some number 80% of your damage, but you gotta put in a lot of hard work and effort to get the 100% or 99 or 95% damage. There are other specs that you can get much higher numbers and much higher damage and be more useful and are tankier and stuff like that. It benefits a lot from being ranged. It benefits a lot from actually having very powerful defensives, which has changed from previous seasons and previous months. It's much better now, so that's definitely a bonus. All right, now subtlety. I'm straight gonna put this into D tier, not because it's bad. It's actually very good. It's very powerful. It's very strong, but it's very difficult to get down correctly. You're in melee. You do have a lot of utilities that you might think is very nice, like having cheat death, but you also have utilities that you are supposed to use as a player to maximize this spec to the absolute T. For some people, even shrouding can be a difficult thing to get down correctly, and that's why I'm putting it into D tier. For new players, if this was like the how good this spec is, it'd be S tier. You know, it's very powerful. Assassination, I'll put into B tier as well. People think that assassination is uh, the easiest and most simple and blah 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 of the rogues, but it's still a rogue. You're still melee. You're still beholden to energy, and you're also reliant on the managing of the poisons. You have to swap targets. You have to make sure you're doing everything correctly. You know, it's it seems quite easy, but it can be quite difficult to get down correctly. So, but it's very powerful, and it is the simplest, in a sense, the simplest rogue spec. But it's very powerful, and it can be very useful to play this as a rogue. Devastation, I'm put into 8 tier. It's not S tier because it dies a lot, and I mean, you know, I'm not gonna dock points from it because it's in the same class as the augmentation coming up. But besides that, it's very easy to do your damage. All of it is very upfront. All of the excuse me, right. All of its damage is upfront, and it just blasts out huge amounts of damage. And it's a very simple, very simple rotation. You got the 25-yard stuff, but cannot I cannot. I don't really. I've played it a lot. I don't really feel like that is too terrible, especially with the mobility you have. But it would be S tier if it wasn't for the fact that you are really squishy. That might change in the next expansion. Looking at hero talents and stuff like that, you never know. Never know. Shadow, D tier. This thing is a powerhouse of a spec, and it changes almost every single season, every single patch. They're reworking this spec, so you gotta learn it anew. You gotta min max everything. You got so much powerful utility to utilize throughout Mythic Plus and raids and everything, and you have so many responsibilities. And but like if you want to play something that is very very difficult to get down perfectly, and I mean everything, the utility, it has no mobility, so you have to be very careful of like this is the penultimate of how good are you at positioning yourself because you don't have mobility, because it genuinely has no mobility except for 40% speed, which some specs have baseline, but anyways, uh, if you want a challenge, a real challenge, and really be rewarded for it, Shadow Priest is one of the best. Subtlety as well, I would, yeah. Destruction, I want to put it into B tier, but it's very like top of B tier because it has a very simple playstyle of you just cast the resources and you spend the charges and you use the cooldowns and all that stuff, but you're very reliant, especially in Mythic Plus, which I tend to focus around. You're very reliant on your Infernal. And when this season is over, you drop your tier set, meaning that you can finally pick up something different than those portals, meaning you pick up more infernal talents, meaning that the infernal is even more important. So I mean, if you want to communicate with the tank, please just please pull gigantic pulls every 3 minutes, then go for it. Like the rotation in that infernal window is just rain of fire, rain of fire, rain of fire, rain of fire. I can't press rain of fire. Okay, incinerate. Okay, rain of fire, rain of fire. You know what I mean? Like it's and the single target rotation is very fun and very interactive. The problem is, like I said, that if it's not being played around in Raid or Mythic Plus, if you're not getting power infusions or buffs, or if you're not getting kind of pampered by like stuff, and if you don't understand how powerful your defensives are, then you can really suffer damage wise, and like you have to learn some stuff to get this down correctly. But it's very tanky, it's ranged, it has a bunch of utilities that you don't have to use on the fly. Like you don't have to use gateway or hellstones or summoning stones, which everyone appreciates, and hell, you can even soulstone someone before they die if you're very useful in raids and stuff like that to resurrect the healer and resurrect the entire party. So, like I say, it's kind of close. It depends, how much of a challenge you want. It's a lot to learn, but it's very rewarding. Every spec is very rewarding. Augmentation is the bottom of D tier, beyond D tier, because uh, playing it casually, you will probably end up doing less damage than just playing, like a devastation or something like that. But but playing it optimally, you don't only have to check your cooldowns, your buffs, your abilities, and all that stuff. You have to check every single party member, or if even in raid, like if you're gonna play this optimally in raid, you are not in for a good time. I can tell you that. If you want to just chill and just press buttons, I mean this is S tier by far because everyone invites you. They don't really look at your damage because they don't understand how to look at your damage or your uptimes or whatever. And you have a cheat death. You're quite tanky. You're gonna become even more tankier in the next expansion. It's a like you know what I mean. But if you want to truly optimize this, if you want to be very useful to your team, this is kind of controversial. It either goes from being the worst or the best, in my opinion. Outlaw. It's down here also. It's a very powerful, very strong, very good spec. It is almost always the spec that the rogue spec that tends to be the best one out of the bunch. People tend to play it. People tend to one trick it essentially, and it's almost always worth it for them to one trick it. Like if you're a rogue, definitely you want to try all the specs. You want to be the best at whatever is being best at. But Outlaw tends to be the best. It is also very difficult. The rotation of Outlaw is very difficult to get down correctly. Wrong button presses is going to cost you a lot of damage, a lot of time, and it's extremely fast paced. and there's a lot to track. There's a lot to do. But again, if you're looking for a true challenge, something you want to one spec, I would even say like only if you one trick max. You know what I mean? Like if this is something you want to play and only play this and get down to the most optimal level, like from the start of the season to the end of the season, you're just playing this. These are perfect specs for that. Every spec is perfect for that, but you know what I mean. There's always something to learn. You're gonna be finished learning devastation before you, you know what I mean. All right, Havoc. I want to put this in the C tier because it is very difficult. It's I would not say it's as difficult as these. There's a lot you can min max with this spec. A whole heck of a lot, especially in Mythic Plus. But it is a bit simpler to get more damage out of it than say Outlaw or Shadow, which if you get these down incorrectly, you're gonna have a bad time. There are at least some talents that you can pick that makes this simpler, like picking no momentum and no movers and stuff like that to be more grounded and just pressure cooldowns. But it is very powerful. It's very strong, but it takes a lot to learn. But it's very worth learning. It's very tanky, but it's a little more difficult than these specs for sure. For sure. Survival, I wanna. I'm biased. I want to put that into. I want to put that into actually. Okay, yeah, like I'll put it into P tier. I'll take my bias down a little bit. It is quite simple to play, and it has no big bursty like you have to press these buttons correctly or anything like that. In Raid and Mythic Plus, you consistently do the very high amounts of damage, and it's very orientated around one or two quick cooldowns like your bombs or butchery or something like that. There's not really any incorrect way. You don't have to dot everything up. You just go in and you just press your buttons and you do big damage. There's a lot you can min max with this stuff. Um, the problem is that you're probably not gonna have an easy time getting into groups or something like that because people still, to this day, think that survival is bad. But that also just comes with the fact that hunter in general is unfortunately looked down upon a little bit. It's unfortunate. They are very good, but they just don't bring the utility or whatever. You know, if you're doing a 20 key, uh, if you're failing a 20 key because you think you don't have bloodlust or something, that's not the reason. Like if you fail a 20 key because you didn't have bloodlust, that is not the reason, or you didn't have arcane intellect, or that's not the reason. So it is very good. It's very consistent and it's very powerful and it's very under the radar. You still have bloodlust, you're still very tanky, and you still have a raid buff that can be nice. You know, 5% damage above 25, above 80% health is very nice. I hope they make it a little bit better, but you know, Windwalker. Ooh, yeah, I think these two are good brothers. You know, they are very powerful. They have very good utility. They're fast paced and they're super strong. They're always relevant, but they are very difficult to get down to this 80% level. Like where you're doing 80% of the damage for, you know, 10 to 20% of the brain power. You know what I mean? And then when you want to get into 90%, then it's suddenly 50, 60% of your brain power. And when you're going to get to 100%, it's 100% of your brain power, you know. So, but it's very good. It's very powerful. All of these are very good options always, but just based on simplicity for the maximum amount of damage and stuff like that, I gotta put it into C tier. Feral, obviously, down here. It's unfortunately not really gonna bring you a lot of damage. Even if you optimize it to the absolute max level, you're just better off playing something else that is just simpler to play to get way more damage. Right? This is like to get 80% of the damage, you need to have 80% of the brain power. And to get 100% of the damage, you need to have 120% of the brain power. It's like it can be very rewarding, but I feel like if you're picking this up for the first time in your life, I I would say don't do that. I would honestly say don't do that unless You are just unfathomably interested in kitty cats, which I understand. Your choice. Fire, I want to also put this down here in C tier because this is a little bit of a sneaky spec because people see this being very powerful, but there is a bit of a gap, I would say, right? So really, if you just don't understand this spec, you're gonna be doing like 20, 30, 40% of everyone else's damage. Someone else doing 200k, you're gonna be doing 60, 70, 80k because you just don't get this down correctly. It's a very high tempo, consistent pulling, always damage, powerful spec, and it tends to not be the best in raid, but it can compete with everything else, of course. But the problem with this fire mage is that it's hard to get down, but once you get it down, once you get through the hurdle of how it works, how the rotation and all the crit stuff and combustion works, and Sun King's blessing for sure, for sure, for sure. That's a tough one to get down perfectly. And the double lust window, or like, good lord, man. But it has like, and also I want to point. I mean, it does have cauterize. It does have cheat death. I want to point out this thing is the tankiest in the game if you do it correctly. If you don't do it, if you don't use your defenses correctly, it is the squishiest. It's not the squishiest in the game, but it is very squishy. And people get very shocked by how it's just like you just randomly die, even though you have cauterize, because you really have to know the raid, you have to know the dungeon, you have to know the boss, you have to know the mobs, everything down to the T to play this optimally. But man, if you play it optimally, wow, it's definitely, this is the main character of the game, in my opinion, for sure. Because like everything kind of revolves around the fire mates if the fire mates is at a top level. Be a hunter. I want to actually put this kind of like B A tier because people always look at this spec as the penultimate, like, just go in there, press buttons, and you're gonna do great damage, and you really don't have to think about it. You have endless mobility. There's nothing you have to cast. It's just instant casts, and you have like max range, and you got the pets and all that stuff. But there is stuff to min max in here, for sure. And you're not getting a lot of the damage if you don't know your rotation, which you do have a rotation, and you do have debuffs and buffs that you have to manage. And if they drop, it's a lot of damage loss, especially in AoE. If you let Beast Cleave drop, it's a lot of damage drop, a whole heck of a lot of damage drop. But it's very good. It is tanky. It has a lot of mobility. It has pets that are not just cute or fun or interesting. They also have good abilities sometimes, like Spirit Heal. Spirit Heal? I think it's called Spirit Heal. And stuff like that. It's very good. I do recommend playing it, but if you want to be very challenging in your gameplay, there, it's also very good. Like, it could be here, you know what I mean? Like, in the fact that if you want to min max this, there's a lot you can min max. Unholy is down here. It's very difficult to get down correctly, and you kind of have like selfish utility. Why, like, you have Death's Advance, which makes you not knock backable. You've got you can grip stuff to you, not towards the tank or stuff, which is still very useful to have. The grip is very nice, but I mean, if there are mobs that you don't want to grip in and you pop Abomination Limb, then oof, oh, good luck with that. That does happen a lot. There are a lot of mobs that run towards some area or something like that that they're not supposed to run towards, and well, you better not pop one of your DPS cooldowns then. So that's so very strange. It tends to change a lot, or I mean, in the past it has changed a lot, but currently it's looking pretty good. It does a lot of good damage. It's a good spec to pick, but there are definitely better options in my opinion. Yeah, definitely better options. Fury is it's also here in B tier. It's a very good spec. The problem is that Arms and Fury and just Warrior in general just doesn't have a lot of the useful utility that's easy to use. If you want to use your utility as a warrior, you have Intercept, which can be very powerful in the right hands. You have Rallying Cry, which can be very powerful in the right hands, aka a healer calling it out. Um, you have some other stuff. Maybe sometimes you can do Shattering Throws. I mean, like honestly, it just doesn't have a lot of utility, but it does have a lot of powerful damage and a very simple rotation to get that. Once you got it down, which does not take a long time, but once you got it down, it is very powerful and it's very fun. But be aware if you suffer from arthritis or if you suffer from repetitive strain injury or wrist injuries or difficult like you're going to be mashing buttons very fast all the time consistently, right? Just be aware of that. Make sure you have buttons on your mouse to and put like spam buttons like whirlwind or rampage or bloodthirst and swap, spread them out between your both of your hands. Anyways, yeah, very good, but not the best. I'm gonna put Frost down here. Okay, okay. If I think about like if you only want one trick, blah blah, I guess this isn't really applicable anymore because one tricking Frost Mage is not really a thing you should do. You should always play both Fire and Frost and sometimes Arcane as a mage if you want to play mage. I don't really recommend, or same with Unholy. If for some reason Frost is better, you really should swap, in my opinion. Frost is very difficult to get down correctly. It's extremely fast. Uh, if it is Glacial Advance build, which it is currently, or was it last season? No, I think it's currently. It can be way more difficult to get down correctly and to play correctly. It's very fast paced and it does have very powerful slows, which can be very good, but it also can be very bad in terms of like sanguine and stuff like that. But it's very fast. Like your main stat is haste. Icy Veins gives you like 20 or 30% haste. I think it's 30%. And Bloodlust gives you 30% haste, and then you have double Bloodlust, and it's like it's very difficult. And you are unfortunately just better off playing something else like a Fire Mage, in my opinion. My opinion. Finally, we get to it. The true S tier, in my opinion. This thing has a 1 minute cooldown or a 2 minute cooldown, and you just blast all the time. You just do high damage. You got your 1 or 2 minute cooldown for every single mob pack or every single raid mobs are spawning or important moment or something like that. Your DPS rotation is just press all of your spenders until you press all of your builders until you can press your spender, then press the spender, and then press all your builders until you can press the spender, and that's it. That's it. On top of that, you are extremely tanky, very powerful. You got bubble, you got physical bubble, you got lay on hands, you got some of the best off healing in the game, as you might have seen in the MDI, where Red Paladin was equal in damage as everyone else and healing everyone at the same time. You got Battle Res, you got a very powerful 3% damage reduction aura. You just can't go wrong. Oh, and also you have like 12-yard range almost at all times. Sometimes you have to dip in and auto attack or something like that, but like this is the penultimate. If you are okay with playing melee, even though you're kind of not melee because you have like really long range, if you're okay with playing melee, this is it. This is the beginner best spec in the game. Highly recommend. Arcane is the opposite. It is very difficult to get down, but you can get a lot of the damage easily if you just learn the basic rotation and keep to it. But man, like I've seen spreadsheets. I have seen some spreadsheets about how this black spec plays and how much you can min max this to the absolute T for almost the same amount of damage as fire. Sometimes more, but it requires an extreme amount of brain power to get down correctly. So I really don't recommend this, honestly. I don't even recommend one tricking this in my opinion. Arms? Arms is a B tier. It's very powerful. It does a lot of the upfront damage and a high amount of it. It just doesn't have anything else. It's squishy. It dies very quickly, especially for a melee plate spec or class. Or it's very weird. It definitely requires some defensive rework or utility rework or something like that because you just can't help the team or anything like that in simple ways. And all you are really doing is just damage, max damage all the time. I don't really recommend this as a beginner spec, but it is very powerful and it is very easy, but it's not really the thing that people want or seek out, and you will understand why. Elemental, it's a B tier as well. I mean, it has a lot of powerful utility, but the utility isn't always needed. I mean, if you think about like fear totem, if you need a fear totem, why would Blizzard design a boss or an encounter or something like that demands you use a fear totem? You know what I mean? Like the only time that people are gonna get feared is that if something goes wrong, and if something goes wrong, you're not gonna be generally you're not gonna be quick enough to put down the tremor totem before someone gets feared or before you get feared. I wish you could just use it while feared. That would make it so much better, but you can't. So it's very powerful. It does a lot of damage. It's very fun. It's very flashy, and it's very cool. It just it really depends on what the tier set, what the expansion, what the season is, what the dungeons are, what the raid is. But currently, I would actually put this in A tier with its tier sets. It's a very simple rotation, both in mostly in AOE, but somewhat also in single target. But I mean, I'm not accounting for this current season, which is kind of close to ending, anyways. So well, I want to put this over here. Balance Druid has a very simple rotation. It's very easy to get down. The problem is that you require a tank that pulls around you, same as our Destro Warlock over here. But unlike our Destro Warlock here, is that you are very squishy. You have a lot of powerful utility, but it requires some good thought to use it correctly. You future you might have some tree and stuff and blah 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 and stuff like that, and but it's very powerful. All these specs are very powerful, very useful, and very good. Even warrior, but some are more useful and some are more powerful and blah blah blah. Affliction, I just would put this in don't recommend at the moment. It needs a serious rework. It suffers a lot from the everything dies too quickly, and even when things are alive, the damage is just the same or lower than every other spec in the game. So it's just not really worth it when there are DPSers that do all of their damage up front and stuff dies quickly. Why bring a DPSer that does damage slowly but ramps up? Except it doesn't really ramp up. That's the problem. Because you don't really have any way to permanently keep agony up on targets. You have to refresh it manually or let it drop. Anyways, that's not the point. The point is that it's not really a difficult spec if you just understand that you just have to put every single thought up, but it can be very difficult to understand how or when to use your soul shards, what to use it on, when to use it, blah blah blah. It needs a rework, in my opinion. Demonology. I want to put this. I want to put this in the top of B tier only because the rotation can be a little bit difficult to get down. But you have a lot of upfront damage, it's very powerful, it's very fun, you're super tanky, you still have all the utility of Warlock. But the rotation, like if the rotation was a little bit simpler, especially on a single target, it would be more higher up. But it's an extremely powerful choice. Finally, it took years and years for it to become a powerful choice in my opinion, but it is a very powerful choice. Frost Decay is bottom of B tier or something like that. Only reason it's there here is because it has one of the most simple rotation in the game. Although, but the problem is that you just never see it, and there's a reason you never see it. It's because it's just not. It just tends to not do very powerful damage, and it just doesn't have anything. Right. The reason you see DKs is blood decay. If you see a DK, they're usually blood decays because they have the most amount of utility. If you need the grips, you bring a blood decay. In raid and Mythic Plus, all that stuff. Having a single grip is not enough. Abomination limb takes too long to pull everything in, and blood decay also has it. But if there's one mob casting somewhere far away, you can always just interrupt it. That's the thing. So I'm not really sold on that. What's going on with the music? I think I got locked up. Anyways, enhancement. Enhancement is very powerful, has a very good utility, is very strong. The same thing as like elemental, but it's way more powerful. Actually, I want to put this into detail with these specs. Like, I want to put like a separator here. These are the I don't really recommend. These are the if you want to one trick this, it can be very powerful. These are the I don't recommend. So enhancement is one of those. Like if you want to one trick something, wow, this thing is powerful and it has one of the most unique uh, funnel damage in the game. If you want to be doing really high keys, or if you really want to just like annihilate one mob that is being a very big nuisance, then this is the spec. But it has got to be the hardest rotation in the game, especially when Bloodlust is going. Oh wow, this thing is the hardest in the game in my opinion. So this is my tier list. How much do you disagree with it? Because you're gonna disagree with it, but this is based on the idea that you will be wanting to do a lot of the damage up front. What I mean is like you pick up the spec, and within a week or two, you're gonna be doing 80% of the damage that is maximally allowable with your current gear. You know what I mean? So if you have max gear and you just pop onto this character with no knowledge, and it's like 489 with everything and the legendaries and blah blah blah, you're gonna be doing 80% of the damage within the first week or two. That's my idea, like of this S tier and stuff like that. You're gonna have a tough time with these specs, doing nice, fun, interesting damage, and understanding the utility and how the spec moves and how the spec works. But beyond 80%, it's all up in the air. I could make an entire new tier list around that, and honestly, I mean, most of them would just be S tier. You know what I mean? Like most of them just would be really powerful, because every spec can be very powerful and every spec can be very useful, and it's just like the difficulty of learning it. These are the ones I honestly don't recommend. These are the hardest to learn. Second hardest, medium, quite easy, super, super easy. Okay, there you go. See ya.